Travis Warren, Hyannis, Mass. Spending time with my family, going over to Aquacket Lake and water skiing there. We'd take, not only our family, but some of our employees that I used to work with and go water skiing over there. So we were always on the water, whether or not it was down at Craigville Beach or down at, Aquacket Lake. I just really enjoy there. My grandmother had a house on the lake, and she had a bunch of sisters that also had a house on the lake, all side by side. So we had a lot of second cousins over there. So we had a lot of kick the can times over there and becking and all those fun games as kids, just growing up and having the lake as our playground, swimming and fishing. It was fun. It was a great time. I was a little nervous when I was in 8th grade because there was a lot of racial tension at that point in time. And my memory of it, I don't know how accurate it is, but the 8th grade going into high school, I know there was a lot of issues, and there was people getting beat up, and they actually had to have police on the roof there. And that kind of scared me as an 8th grader going into high school. But once I got there, it was nothing. It was not a big deal, but that was the only scary kind of moment I ever had in my life. It was kind of nerves, but having an older brother at the school and having a dad at the school, it was fine, absolutely fine, and had a great time at high school, and I had to work at it. I was not like my sister or my brother. I had to work at school to make it work for me, but it was a struggle to get through. I'm not the studious person in the world. I took a class, I don't remember what class I had with her, and she was just a love. I mean, she just really cared about her students and everybody else, and she'd have a class in a circle, and we'd read books, and it was 2001 Space Odyssey, and I knew that book inside and out. I was answering questions every single day, and I was her star pupil. I took the test, and she gave me an F. And I'm like, what? She goes, I know you know this material better than anybody else, but you must have been so excited about writing things down that it was like one long run-on sentence. And you just forgot about punctuation or whatever. You did not focus. You needed to learn how to focus, and you needed how to properly write sentences and calm down on test taking or something. So she helped me get some extra help to kind of work through that. And she was really caring, loving, and and I reunited with her at the library, 15 years ago when I moved back into town, and she's still just wonderful as can be, and she love of her books was obvious when she was working down in the bookstore at the Centerville Library, so it was awesome. One of the toughest teachers. You could not make one spelling error, or you went from an A to a B, and if you made a second spelling error or grammatical error, you went from a B to a C. And between my mother and I, we both were cursing his names because we did not have, the word processes that we have now that are very easy. This was back with typewriters and correcting paper. He didn't even want correcting paper. If he saw that, he would have a fit, and he would mark you down. And one of the toughest teachers I've ever dealt with. Is just unyielding. It was pretty cool. My daughter would drive to school with me, so like I used to quite often ride with my dad, and she'd be over at the high school. I was at the middle school my first year of teaching, so she would walk over from the high school over to the middle school and say hello and kind of do some homework while I was still, trying to work with students after school and then drive home. But I was over at Sturgis when my son was going through Barnstable High School, and he was like, Dad, come back over to high school. I kind of like to see you over here. And so I changed over to the high school, and I went up to the ALP program. And so my junior and senior year was there with my son. So at first we were in different schools, but my son was even more of a reluctant learner than I was. So it was a challenge to kind of motivate him. And with my daughter too, she was a fantastic learner for most subjects except for math, and we actually had to get an outside tutor for her because you know how it is sometimes with parents butting heads with children. Sometimes they can learn better from somebody else than they can from you. but my son loved learning math from me. He said, like, you explain it so much better than most of my teachers, make it easy for me. But, it's always that challenge. It's always such a difficult years for children to try to find their way through the world, and parents don't know anything, but they're still coming to you, and so it's an interesting dynamic, and it's fun when they graduate college, and they kind of change that relationship with you, and you become more of a friends. I was just talking about this with my wife the other day. Our daughter moved down to Florida, and she's absolutely loving the warm temperatures down there, especially this winter with all the snow we have here. She goes, I don't have that problem. It's 75 degrees out right now. So she has promised that, if we do retire, if we ever retire from the store, that she would, definitely move back and take over the business. So she had worked there for 5 or 6 years while she was going through middle school and high school, and she loved her time there for the most part. She was one hiatus where she did not like it, and she worked for 1 year for Friendly's and realized we weren't such the bad bosses that she once thought we were, and came back with a whole new motivation. And she moved from Vegas to here, and it was a big change for her, because that's where I met my wife, was out there, and that's where we fell in love and got married and moved back. So she was kind of reluctant to come back here, and that was a tough transition for her, but she grew to love the Cape and loves everything about it except for the cold temperatures. But she and both my son just graduated college and was off doing computer programming in Rhode Island near the Connecticut border, and he's enjoying that, and he says, yeah, I'd love to come back and help out with the business. So it was not much twisting of the arms to try to get them to come back here, but they need to go out in their world and do their thing, make their own money, just like I had to. And my dad did not give me the business. I had to buy it at fair market value, and I'm still paying the business off, so I'm still heavy mortgaged on that. So I'll do the same with my kids. It was pretty awesome. My dad knew everybody in the world. I mean, literally drive down the street, he had a classic 1967 Jeepster convertible, and everybody knew that vehicle because it was always parked in front of Four Cs or at the high school, and everybody knew that. And you drive around town and you were waving to just about everybody on the street. And I mean, you knew everybody in town. You go to any play or any restaurant, everybody knew us, and it was pretty cool. He was such a kind, concerned, venturesome, I mean, he was still skiing, 40 times a winter at the age of 73. It is just incredible, and played golf 3-4 times during the week, during, his retired years, and swimming a mile a day down at Crickville Beach. I mean, it was just full well, he got a wetsuit, and he was trying to swim late into the fall and early in the spring, but he didn't do it as much in the winter time. But he says it's a different stroke when you have that buoyancy of the wetsuit on. It's a little weird, so he didn't quite like it, but he was always doing something everywhere we traveled in the world. We were very fortunate. He took a sabbatical from high school one year when I was in 6th grade. I was being the youngest. We took a month off, and we went to Europe, and it was amazing how many people knew him over there. I mean, every single country we stopped in, we were looking up somebody that we knew over there, and it was just phenomenal. And it's just, especially with this chrome dome, I mean, it's just so easy to spot, anywhere we went to, and it's just like, is that Dick Warren? I'm like, and my kids are now doing a little bit with me. I'm not as well known as my dad was, but my kid's like, you know everybody. I'm like, not even close. My dad knew far more people. Between skiing up in New Hampshire, golfing, his love of collecting, he was just always involved in something. He hardly spent any time alone. He was always trying to include others in his plans. And
literally thousands of kids.
yeah, absolutely. We constantly have people coming back and saying, Dick Warren changed my life. I just wanted to let you know that he was such a heavy influence. Or they'd actually tell a story where she was just a cashier at some place, and he's like, your voice was made for radio. Why aren't you doing radio? And he'd start just, clamoring on her, you should quit this job. You should go find a job in radio and broadcasting. And she quit a job and she got a job in radio broadcasting. And it's like, he literally did change my life, It was phenomenal, and then he started, migrating when he kind of retired from teaching and guidance counseling. He started doing more teaching of ice cream making. He taught at the University of Maryland, he taught at Penn State, he taught at a place in Florida, university there. Even one year he was up at the University of Guelph up in Canada. So he met so many more people, and then they created a little company that would go out and teach people and get paid to do it. So they had a little marketing consulting firm so he literally, everywhere he went, he wanted to play golf or ski, and he would look up anybody, a friend of a friend, and say, get me on this golf course, I need to play this golf course, I need to ski at this ski area. And so he was just so unbelievably connected, and it was just the funny stories, as you were saying, whenever we traveled, when you call out dad in a group of people, 20 dads turn around. Well, I didn't have to worry about that because I would just yell at Chief, which is commonly known as at Four Seas Ice Cream, was Chief. So I would just have to yell at Chief, and only one person would turn around. So it was hilarious how I would yell that out, and people like, Chief. No, not really. I didn't grow up wanting to take over. I wanted to be an architect or an engineer or designer of something. And it wasn't until the passing of my brother, he was always the golden child to take over the family business. My sister didn't really, express a lot of interest. She only worked there for about 4 years, whereas Randy and I both worked there for about 11 years throughout our high school and college, and she did a little bit on the other end. Randy really wanted to take over. He went to school for business. He was, loved it, and people loved him. And after he passed, I kind of just started reassessing things and like, what's my dad's life like, And, he is such a pillar of the community. People loved him. He helped. He put smiles on faces, whether or not it was at school, golfing, swimming, skiing, or at work, with the delicious ice cream. He was always putting a smile on people's faces, and he did not drive around in a Cadillac. He was not the richest man in the world. Could I go off and make more money doing something else? Maybe, but he enjoyed his life a lot, and Four Seas was able to allow him to play a little golf and to ski and to do a little vacations here and there. So I'm like, I guess I could teach and maybe be, the owner of Four Seas Ice Cream when that time comes. And sure enough, I was out in Las Vegas, and he called me up one year and said, I'm about 3 years away from retiring. If you have any inclination on coming back, you gotta let me know. Otherwise, I gotta start to find somebody else that I would call, because he had a couple former employees that he would probably have called second. But he definitely called me. He did not even kind of offer to my sister, because she had a fantastic job with great vacations and making good money, and he's like, this is a step backwards for you. You're not going to have any vacations, and you're going to make less money. This is just a dumb move for you, but so I had to convince my wife to, at the time my girlfriend, to marry me and move her and her daughter out here to Cape Cod, going from the 24-hour town of Las Vegas to sleepy little town of Centerville, where at 6 o'clock during the wintertime, everyone is in their houses and not outside. So it was quite the adjustment, and had a fantastic time, and I love being part of it and putting smiles on people's faces now. The profitability is down. The prices of cream and sugars and chocolates have skyrocketed over the years. I know my dad has told me many times that I cannot always raise the price of an ice cream cone to the same as what all my cost of goods have gone up. Just like people will not pay $5 for an ice cream cone. And so the percentages kind of dwindled down, and at some point in time we had to kind of lock it down and do increases with the price of the goods, because otherwise if you kept kind of cheating and saying, oh, I want to make it a fair value for families to come out. You know, when a family of 4 or 5 come out and get 5 ice cream cones, he didn't want to break the bank for them. So we were trying to keep it low. And just, I think today's kids are a little less motivated than the kids back then. I remember a lot of the managers, if they wanted extra money, they would be bondoing his car. They would be, polishing his car, waxing his car. I mean, they'd do anything to pick up an extra dollar. They'd do odd jobs around. They'd sweep the parking lot. They, trim trees, whatever it took. And if I even consider asking a kid to, do some weeding or do anything, or even if I mentioned, hey, I could pay you an hour to wash my car, and they're like, no, I'm gonna go to the beach. So it's a little bit different. We still have wonderful kids working for us and all, but it's just that kind of mentality has changed over the years where, people are so motivated and just do anything for a dollar, and they're so hungry to succeed. And it just seems like things have changed over the years. And now there's a lot more competition too in the food industry in general. And not only, you go every 5 miles and there's another ice cream shop somewhere, whether or not it's a frozen yogurt place or not, but there's...
But there's still only one Four Cs.
Yes, 81 years now. He always did a little wholesaling, but everybody had to come to us to pick up. He had Dick and Ellie's Flea Market. They did a phenomenal business. There were several restaurants that would pick up some tubs, and there was a place in Yarmouth. There was a candy place down there, and he wholesale to them, and they picked up, and they put up a big sign on top of their building saying Four Cs Ice Cream, and he had to fight really hard to get them to say serving Four Cs Ice Cream, and they kept refusing. So finally he's like, you're not going to get a franchise without paying franchise fees. You're not going to just pretend you're a Four Cs Ice Cream. So if you don't take the sign down or change the wording to saying serving, and it has to be a certain percentage saying serving, so it's easy for customers to see, then I'm not going to sell to you. And so he stopped selling to them. So I was school teaching and loving life here on the Cape, and we got to a point where there were other people starting to wholesale and put quarts in businesses. And I was trying to figure a way of maybe trying to do Four Cs year round. And I'm like, I'll have to get a second location. There's no way I can heat that place, and there's no way I can do this. I'll have to figure out another way of doing it in a second location. We had a couple clients that we were trying to pick up as far as wholesale. And they said, I'd love to have your ice cream, but I'm not going to have your ice cream in the summertime and X brand in the wintertime, and then go back to yours in the summertime. I want consistency. So if you ever consider going year round, I will definitely pick you up as a wholesale client. And that kind of planted the seed to me and my wife, so we're kind of like trying to think about all that. And we finally talked to our plumber and our heater and our HVAC guy, and he's like, I could put a heater in there and maybe you can insulate the ceiling, or you can shut off the water to the rest of the store, so you can just have it in kind of the back production area, and you could do a little minor things, and you could have some hot water year round, and you could produce year round. So I'm like, okay. Started really the spinning of the wheels, and then we said, well, if I'm going to be here, the first year I just ended up substitute teaching here and there, so I would like put a chair out in front of the store with an open sign on it, because it was like hit or miss on which days I was there, and I would post it up on Facebook, and it kind of became the slogan, especially the ladies over at the Centerville Elementary School. They said, if you see the chair, you know he's there. So it became the thing. I put the neon lights up. I would, put the sign, a new sign that said open and bright red lettering, and none of that worked. It was the chair. Because people were like, why is there a chair? And they like break the neck trying to turn around and seeing it. And you hear the brakes screech. And I'm like, oh God, not another accident. No, they were turning around, coming back in. It was like, you're open? After 75 years of being closed, you're open now in the wintertime? And it was a kind of a fun little thing. And now that we have set hours, the first year I had set hours of Wednesday through Sunday, I stopped putting the chair out and people are like, where's the chair? I'm like, we have set hours. You don't have to worry about whether or not the chair is out or not. No, we want the chair out there. So now they're insistent on having the chair out there during the winter months, so it's kind of funny. I'd have to categorize that into the beaches. Besides Four Cs Ice Cream, I love that place. It's my heart and soul. I'd have to say the beaches. I spent so much time at Long Beach, Craigville Beach, and down at the beach or at the Woquacket Lake. You know, the water, and it's so relaxing. I remember going down to Long Beach and sleeping in between shifts. Back in my days when I worked at Four Seas as a teenager, I would work 6 mornings a week from 7 in the morning to about noontime, and then go back there at 7:30 at night and work until 11:30 at night. And I did 5 nights a week and 6 mornings. So I only had a day and a half off, and I would have just this block of 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours in the afternoon off. So I'd ride my bike down to Long Beach, I'd take a run, I'd go for a swim, and then I'd pass out on the beach and just, it was just hearing those waves crash, and just, it was not as busy as Craigville Beach. If you wanted people watch, you go to Craigville Beach. But if you wanted just some relaxation and no one around you, no one throwing a frisbee near your head, you go down to Long Beach and you just pass out and just relax, and just the waves crashing on a beach and taking a walk on the beach is one of the most relaxing things in the world. All my clubs have been handed down. I think I bought one driver and one kind of weird pitching club that can go in both directions. So you could do it lefty or righty. It's like a putter, but it's angled so you could pop it up a little bit. And those are the only 2 clubs I think I've ever bought in my life. They're all hand-me-downs from my dad. Definitely the fall. I get to enjoy that, especially now that I'm not teaching. I have a couple more days off, and I could do things and enjoy the warm weather and take longer walks on the beach with my wife. And it's not as crowded, and it's a little bit more relaxed pace. During the summertime, it's absolutely crazy, and I do not have a day off from April 1st to September 15th. It's just right out straight, so not a single day off that whole entire season. So my first day off usually comes right after about September 15th or so, and I love to walk the beaches and explore, and I just wish more businesses were open during the fall, or even the Melody Tent, because I don't even get to go to a show during the summertime because I'm afraid they're going to call me, and why waste the money of going to a concert when you're going to get called out of it and called down back to the store. So I wish the Melody Tent would have some shows in the fall for just locals, but there's some comedy shops, here in the Cape, and there's some, nice things to do in the wintertime, in the fall and into the wintertime. So I love the fall season. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have the beaches, you have the lakes, and you just have the history here, and just the warm weather, but it's not as crazy warm as New York or Boston. You have those ocean breezes that just cools us off. I mean, that is what Cape Cod's all about, is tourism. And, it's nice to see some of the old businesses still around. It's a shame that some of them have gone by the wayside. I just saw the Paddock was sold recently, and, it's probably not even going to be called the Paddock anymore. And you have Mildred's Chowder House, which ended up being sold, and then within 2 years it was gone and then tore down. It's just a shame that some of these old businesses aren't still around, because it's fun to see these old, classic shops still there, and it's what Cape Cod has its character. Yeah, I mean, the penny candy store in Centerville also is very iconic. It's just another slice of, Americana. It's just so old-fashioned, and just going in there, narrow little corridors, and they're not penny candy anymore. It's maybe nickel candy, but it's so much fun to go into shops like this and to walk downtown Centerville. One of my favorite memories earlier, besides walking on the beaches, was Centerville had the trees that were like a canopy. And you go down from Main Street, from the penny candy store down to the old general store, the trees just covered the entire road, and it felt like you were going down a tunnel, and hardly any sunlight ever hit the pavement during the summertime there. And it was just so cool, and to see tourists coming down that street as I ride my bike or walk around the town, see them going, whoa, because it's like their streets are so wide in most other places, or you're from the Midwest, you don't even have hardly any trees. There's just flat land and just farms everywhere, and to see this canopy of trees is just so warm and inviting. So anytime I've ever traveled and I see a street that's just tree lined, it just brings back those memories of Centerville. My name is Douglas Warren, and I live in town of Hyannis.